All right, our next inductee is Pat the Brat Piper. And here to induct Pat Piper into the Hall of Fame is a guy that's done it all in the business. He's been a referee, he's been an announcer, he's been a promoter. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Matarazzo.
He told me he didn't have enough tape for me to just wing this. So I did write down a few things. 30 years ago, long before Al Snow coined the phrase Job Squad, a group of well-seasoned veteran wrestlers were on TV every week, doing the job for someone else in order to elevate them to the next level. And they did it because it was their job and they were proud of it. 30 years ago, tag team wrestling was approaching its greatest height of popularity. It was becoming common to see a tag team match as the main event on TV. Teams like the Rock and Roll Express, the Midnight Express, the Von Erichs, the Freebirds, the Road Warriors, Nasty Boys, and of course, the British Bulldogs and the Hart Foundation electrified crowds with tandem moves that dazzled the imagination. 30 years ago, the territory system was in full effect, and the Missouri state title meant something. If you were chosen to hold that title, it was a guarantee that a shot at the 10 pounds of gold, the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, was in the future. And 30 years ago, I met Pat the Brat Piper. See, I was a 14-year-old kid in a new school, in a new town, starting high school to boot. I didn't know where I'd fit in. Making friends didn't come easy. Then one day, I see this skinny, scrawny, loudmouth kid telling Sean McKinnon, one of the high school wrestlers, that his favorite pro wrestler, Tito Santana, just lost the Intercontinental title to Spike Jones. Now I listened to Pat lay it on thick. Sean wasn't having it. So I did what any other kid who needed to fit in and try to be cool would do. I backed up Pat's story. And we fed off each other the whole time. And we laid out the entire match of what happened. And had Sean absolutely convinced that Spike Jones was the new champ. See, there was no internet. There was no Google. He wasn't going to be able to find out until Saturday morning when he started watching TV. There's nobody named Spike Jones. And that was the first time I met Pat Piper was on a rib, and we became best friends ever since. Our passion was wrestling, and we vowed that someday we'd make it to that squared circle. We spent hours beating the bag out of each other, trying to learn the moves and the bumps. Till one day in 1994, Pat got the call from the WWF. He was going to work the King's Court with Jerry the King Lawler. And that led to the main event of the King of the Ring, where Roddy Piper himself brought him to the ring to fight Lawler. I always said that Pat took his 15 minutes of fame and made a 15-year career out of it. See, when most people start at the bottom and work their way up, Pat did the opposite. He started at the top, and when he went back home and didn't get that call back to the big dance, he had to come to the realization that he needed to restart his career. And it wasn't easy. Many nights we talked about whether it was worth it, whether the little or no pay was enough. The fact of the matter is, almost anyone here will tell you, we would have done it for free. Some of the best advice we ever got was that we should only work for one promotion at a time and not oversaturate ourselves in one area. Stay loyal and it will mean something when you show up. And we always did. When Pat asked me to induct him, I was beyond honored. The last time he asked me to stand up for him, I was the best man in his wedding. So, of course, I was nervous about the outcome of this. But, Pat, I talked to Joe Crowne, and he reassured me that no matter what happens, you can still have your reward every other weekend. You can still get a 1 week during the summer, just don't be late with your checks. But seriously, Pat's ride in this crazy business that we love went far beyond his wildest dreams. He has the respect of not only his peers, but the very people he idolized growing up. What started as wrestling being a part of him has now become him being a part of wrestling. And it's my honor and my pleasure to induct my best friend, Pat the Brat Piper, into the 2014 New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Well, now would be the time for anybody who has any young children in their room and might get offended by some language. Now might be the time to leave, because you never know what's going to come out of my mouth.
You're welcome.
Well, I'm going to start this out like I used to start out every past pit. For those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Pat the Brat Piper. I am the legendary son of the legendary Roddy Piper. And like my father before me, I would just like to say thank you for the honor of the Hall of Fame. It's been a hell of a ride. 20 years ago, Monday Night Raw, Jerry the King Lawler announced that his guest in the King's Court was going to be Roddy Piper. Instead, I came walking through the curtain. And everybody didn't like that. They actually started booing me out of the building, which I cherished. I thought that was the greatest thing in the world. But as Joe said, in life, I did everything backwards. I started out on Raw, then being a part of a main event pay-per-view at the King of the Ring. And then I went on to the New England, the New England independent wrestling scene. And, I started out backwards. And I can see why some of the people might not have liked me coming to their backyard and being given the chance to shine. I can understand that, because a lot of wrestlers were struggling, and I came walking in, and all of a sudden I was getting this push in the independents, and a lot of people weren't liking that. I can understand that. But what I always wanted to be a manager in the independents. I wanted to follow in the footsteps such as the Grand Wizard, Captain Lou Albano, Classy Freddie Blassie, Jim Cornette, Gary Hart, Paulie Dangerously. And if anybody first remembers when Roddy Piper came to the WWE in 1993, he was a manager. He managed Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff and Dr. D. David Schultz. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to be that manager that Roddy Piper, he could have been a great manager, but he opened up his mouth and, of course, got him into trouble, so I got him back into the ring. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to bring back the old flair of the Piper's Pit, the old flair of Piper being a manager. But right now I'd like to thank some people. I'd like to thank Joe Crowne for putting this whole thing together. I'd like to thank the WWE for the opportunity of taking a chance with an unknown. I'd like to thank Kevin Dunn from the WWE, the person who contacted me for Raw and the King of the Ring game. I'd like to thank Matt West, Kyle White, aka the Storm Brothers, for bringing me into Mayhem Independent Wrestling, and then several years later bringing me back in to perform for New England Championship Wrestling along with Sheldon Goldberg. And I would also like to thank Mike Spa. And I gotta give it to Mike. I mean, sometimes the paydays weren't always there.
Get your next time.
A lot of times they weren't there at all. But what Mike Spa did, no, I'm not telling you. What Mike Spa did for me was he let me develop my character in his organization, WWE.
I made you.
I gave you that kill, you mother.
Great, I'll be here all night. Alright, so Mike would allow me to develop my character, and every time he brought in a star, whether it be from WWE, whether it be from ECW, he'd bring them in, he'd put them with me or against me, he would have them pick, and at the end of the night, they would basically be the chef. So that was, you can't put a price tag on that. And, you know, I've had some memorable people on my pit. From ECW fame, I've had the Baldy Tony DeVito.
Yeah.
I've had Big Guido, Big Dick Dudley, Bill Alfonso and the Sandman, Julio De Niro, and of course, no gimmicks needed, Chris Candido. I've had international superstars in my pit, from Juventud Guerrera to Latino Heat Eddie Guerrero. I've also had legends in my pit, from
A tin hut, you maggot stones!
Sergeant Slaughter, to Jerry the King Lawler,
To the Superfly, Jimmy Snooker, brother!
from D'Lo Brown to Doink the Clown, from Al Snow to Dan DeVino, from midgets, I have had everybody in my pit. Then of course came the Brat Pack, with my members like the Highlanders, Rory and Ronnie McAllister, Purdy Purdy, Diamond Dave Diamond, Kenny Jones from the Spirit Squad, and before he was Rah Shisco Bar on the WWE, he was with me. And of course, like I said before, no gimmicks needed, Chris Candido. But I want to thank each and every one of you out here tonight who has ever come to a show to see me, to support me. I want to thank my friends. I want to thank my family members. And just God bless each and every one of you. Thank you so much for this. And God bless. Don't forget to take away, and don't forget to wear a rubber. Good night.